We now want to switch gears and get into the topic for this morning and just a little background in regards to this. Now, the High Court ruled last week that abortion remains illegal in Kenya, but quashed a directive by the Health Ministry that saw national standard guidelines for the procedure withdrawn. The decision was made by Judges Agre Muchelule, John Mativo, George Odunga, Lydia Chode, and Mombi Ngogi.
Now, the ministry withdrew the dispute guidelines 6 years ago after stakeholders failed to agree on them. Health workers were therefore directed to stop attending trainings on safe abortion. The petitioners opposed the move, saying that the women were left with no option but to seek abortion services from quacks. But the government insisted on the illegality of this process. Now, we need to let you know that for purposes of this discussion, we had also reached out to Ann Kioko, Citizen Go, a pro-life campaigner. And she was supposed to join us for the program, but cancelled last night. We also had reached out to the Ministry of Health to get their representative here with us. But they said that they are currently studying that ruling by that 5-judge bench, and they will not be able to join us this week for that as well. All right, let's get a quick reaction from each of our panelists. Honorable Pasaris, let's start with you. Let's get your thoughts, your interpretation of how the High Court chose to rule last week. Your thoughts.
Okay, first of all, I'm pro-choice for many reasons, okay? I'm Catholic, and I love the Lord, and I cannot agree that a woman, I feel a woman has the right to make choices on her body, and I feel sometimes government has rights to make choices for the children that are being abused. I've seen 10-year-olds or 11-year-olds or 12-year-olds giving birth and dying, and not giving birth because they engaged in sexual activity that they were aware of what they were doing. They were raped by somebody very close to them, maybe a father, a relative, and then you're forcing that child who's been raped and doesn't understand what has happened to her to give birth to a child and push a child at the age of 11 or 12. And then you don't even want the child, because at the end of the day, that child is, you're the mother, that's the child of your husband. You know, so we have a lot of social issues. So for me, I sat through the judgment, and I have to say I was so proud. This is when you can see the law works. I mean, those judges, for me, sat down and looked at every angle to do with this issue. All right, and they gave us all the solutions there. Now it's for us to sit down and think about what are we dealing with here. You know, when you sat down and listened to the story of JMM, she was one of the petitioners, and what she endured: raped at 12 or 13, pregnant. I think she was 14. Raped, pregnant, goes to a pharmacy. The pharmacy, because they don't have guidelines, or because now they're doing something which is not their mandate to do, inject her thigh, all right, tell her to go home, the fetus will come out. She goes home, the fetus doesn't come out, she goes back again, he digs into her, all right, sends her back home. She obviously starts bleeding, she gets sick, she goes to a public hospital. She's not doing very well. They realize that they cannot serve her needs. It's post-abortion care. We offer it as a country. We have a ward in Kenyatta that deals with post-abortion care. 7 women and girls are dealing with dying from abortion daily. So you can imagine the ones that are not dying, that are in hospital. And then she's brought into Nairobi by taxi. Okay, because then she's not given an ambulance to come here. She's admitted here. She goes through such a horrible life. Her mother comes all the way here. She eventually dies at 17. Look at the life that girl went through. All because we don't want to talk about sex in our schools. We don't want to talk about rape openly and say that, you know what, if you are raped, all right, this is what you can do. This is where you can go. This is who you can talk to. She was scared to talk to her parents. She was raped. She should have had a safe place to go and talk. But the thing is, we just think that every time a child is pregnant, she did something wrong. She didn't do something wrong. She was raped. So we need to have these discussions. And I think the church that has an audience should be the first coming out and having these discussions. You know, having a counseling desk in the church where if you've been raped, you can talk to someone. Having a counseling desk in all the schools where you can talk to someone.
I think that is one step in the right direction.
We need counseling for so many reasons. We even need life coaches. We need counseling for our youth who are in a hopeless state in terms of unemployment. You know, so you know, somebody once said to me, what makes America great? America has problems. There are people who sleep hungry in America. There's so many social issues. There are drug issues. There's so many issues in America, all right? There's homeless people, you know, unemployed. But the thing about America is you openly discuss everything. And America leaves no one behind in the sense that everybody is inclusive in a government. So everybody has audience with somebody important in government or with legislators or with social structures. But today, I think as a country, we need to understand that, for me, that abortion is real, it's happening. And to have the DMS to have unilaterally stopped the training on and the provision of guidelines for safe abortion was wrong. But look at how long it took us to get that decision.
Right.
All right?
All right. Let me rope in Teresa Moon into the conversation. Even as you give us your thoughts on the interpretation by the High Court ruling on Wednesday last week, she's talked about something, about sex education. Can sex education be the answer to reducing early pregnancy, not through rape, but through consensual agreement? But can sex education play a role in that as well, even as you give us your thoughts on the interpretation of the High Court?
Okay, first, I just hope that after this JMM's death, that was it, that's the end. I pray so that her life was the sacrifice for any other girl of her age who might go through that. But yes, sex education is real, and we must have that conversation with our children, and it plays a very big chunk of a solution to the problems we have. Yes, you've asked, it's not that all teenagers get defiled or raped to get pregnant. There are also those who are having experimental sex. So at age 13, teenage life, you're experimenting everything. We've just talked about experimenting drugs, you're experimenting sex, what you maybe probably, I don't know, wherever you have seen it from. So there's a lot of experiment happening in teenagers' lives. And those are children. And we have responsibility of our children. So let's speak to them and say, if you decide to be experimental, for whatever reason, because at some time you can really talk and have even the counseling in church and everything, but somehow the societal forces can be greater than all those things that you have done. Use a condom. Or if you do, please be open to me and tell me it happened just a few hours ago or yesterday. We will find a solution. And I'm here saying that it is okay to give that teenager a contraceptive if I can save her at that point, as compared to letting her getting pregnant, and then here we are, me and you fighting over what to do with her body and that child, and we had so many other things we would have done to prevent her to reach that stage.
So who is supposed to champion the conversation of sex education, parents or teachers?
First, we start with the churches because they're the most influential.
All right, churches.
Everyone, churches.
Sex education come from churches?
Yes, churches, then parents, and then you have teachers. Sorry, in a normal world, I'll say parents first, then churches. But in the Kenya today, churches are more even influential than parents. So I'd go the other way around. Churches, then parents, then teachers.
And sex education, does it mean just learning body parts?
Oh yes, the other day that was a debate we had where someone saying, oh, you even have this song, these are my body parts. And I was like, wait a minute. That song came out to save children from sexual violence. It even had nothing to do with sexual education in itself. So I think it's not just about saying these are your body parts. It's what can those body parts do? And when you touch here, this is what it feels. But you can wait to feel it at this age. Or if this body part does this, we're actually told not to call them these body parts. Let me start by saying this is a penis.
Right.
It will enter into a vagina.
Right.
You will feel very nice, but the consequences are this. So you talk about a child coming up, and if this child comes up, you'll not be able to raise them like mommy does or daddy does. This is the consequences. So you name them as it is, and it's not only about the body parts, but what the actions that these body parts can do.
Okay.
Yes.
Martin, let's come into this conversation. Now, the Director of Medical Services, and again, I say we did reach out to the Ministry of Health to have them join us on the program, but they said they will not be able to. They justified their action by referring to the 2010 Constitution, which clearly provides that abortion on demand is illegal, and there was no need to train health workers on safe abortion or importation of medicines for medical abortion as well. In your legal opinion, how does one navigate the clauses in the Constitution, which is the laws that govern this nation, vis-a-vis what some may say are the rising demands of the society that we live in?
Thank you very much, Waiga. I think I will start from the point that what the court did on the 12th of June is what is good for this country, and is what this country has been struggling with. And it just didn't start the other day when we promulgated the 2010 Constitution. It's been a debate for those who are for, those who are against. But what is at the center of all this struggle is, one, how do we deal with the large number of women who are dying from unsafe abortion? It is a public health issue. And two, how do we create a framework that delivers health services that serves everyone, that do not just allow access to services to those who can afford services from private providers? Because public health as a right ought to be a primary responsibility of government. So that when we come then to the navigation of the 2010 Constitution, and at this point I would basically defer to now what the judges have said. One, the law is now clarified by the court. It is settled. And what the court has said is what the 2010 Constitution put together was actually a consensus of that struggle. How do we protect the rights of women and girls? How do we ensure that we eliminate maternal deaths and morbidity arising from unsafe abortion? So the solution was now found when we were doing the 2010 Constitution in trying to bridge a gap. That one, for those who are saying there is a right to life, we all agree with you. When does life begin? We all agree with you. Should the law allow for instances when life can deliberately a decision is made to terminate a life? And what would be those circumstances? And that is what the Constitution now put together in 2010, the agreed national compromise. And what was expected then of the
talking about Article 26?
Article 26 of the Constitution, protecting the right to life in its entirety. And then what then the Constitution calls on the Ministry of Health to do is now put in laws, put in regulation, put in standards to ensure that we protect access to services that facilitate the protection of life, the protection of health. I quickly then get down to what the actions of the Director of Medical Services. Let us not forget that prior to the 2010 Constitution, access to reproductive health services, including abortion, was those services were available. Unfortunately, it was only a preserve of a few. You only get it from a doctor. The contention or the challenges we had from a long time ago is that how many doctors do we have? There are very few. It simply means that if I cannot access a doctor, I will die. If my life is threatened because of pregnancy, if my health is threatened because of a pregnancy. And then two, we also had people bringing in what I would call their religious perspective or their personal prejudices to provision of health services. So that if I think it is not favorable to my religious inclination to provide a reproductive health service like abortion, I would not provide it. So the compromise was in the 2010 Constitution, and the Constitution as clarified by the court. One, protected the right to health, protected the right to life, and allowed for instances when in the protection of life and health, you can terminate a pregnancy. And what we are talking about here is not about abortion on demand, because that has never been a question and was never questioned before the court. Whether abortion is legal or illegal was never questioned before the court, because we cannot start questioning what the Constitution says. Okay, what we must do is then to implement what the Constitution says, and that is what the judges have said. This is how to implement it.
All right, allow me to play the devil's advocate here, since we don't have a representative from the other side. The religious individuals you're talking about, for them, they stand on the aspect that it's wrong because as human beings, we do not have the right to take away life because we're not givers of life, right? So does that mean that the unborn also do not have rights as well?
I will start from where you stopped, from the giver of life. Is this giver of life also in a position to deliberately take away, not to protect that life? The reason why abortion is allowed by law and has been pushed by service providers is to protect the very right we are talking about. The challenge, and if you read the judgment, the judges have actually, they state the social context. What is the problem? We ask ourselves, what is the problem? Is that we have large number of deaths and sicknesses, injuries arising from unsafe abortion. What is causing this unsafe abortion? One, there could be medical conditions that require termination, but because the law is not clear, because there is no training, because the service is not available, it will lead to a death. Two, there is, besides the training, there is then an availability of services, and there are instances that then the health of the mother is at risk because of a pregnancy.
Okay.
So that what is from, even if we were to talk from those who are saying it is about protecting the life, it is actually termination of pregnancy is allowed to preserve that very life.
Okay.
And what the law has now done and what the Constitution has now done is to say, when do you make that decision?
Okay, we want to interrogate this further, but we are due for a break, so just hang on, sorry. Let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll give each of our panelists a chance to give us their final thoughts on this. Remember that we had also invited Anne Kioko, a pro-life campaigner. She cancelled last minute, so she'll not be able to join us. Also invited the Ministry of Health, and they said they'll not be able to attend this discussion. You're watching Daybreak. You can engage on this topic. 2242 is the SMS line. The hashtag is Daybreak. Stay with us. We come back to wrap this discussion. We'll be right back.